All right, so this video we're going to look at the map scene. This is one of the demo pages in the Storyteller's iOS Starter Kit 2. And as you can see, one of the things we're going to talk about is just moving along this path. But the first one is going to be how are we changing these textures, or the animated textures, I should say, and how are we saving them? Because if I were to close down the app right now, we would actually return to this page as the car. So let's take a look at that. And by the way, you can go to a plane, boat, or car. So those are your three options. And let's head over here to the map.sks file. And what we've got is a vehicle on here. See, that's the name of it, vehicle. And it has a custom class of element. And then just initially what we're doing is just showing kind of any old texture right here, which is going to end up getting replaced by the animated action. And by the way, if you're totally new to Xcode, all I did to get this on here was just drag out a color sprite. I gave it a texture, I gave it a name, and again I gave it that custom class. The custom class gives it all that extra magic it takes to work. So over here in our, let's actually switch over here to our actions file. I've got a .sks file called kit animations, and if you need to create a new action file from scratch, you can always go over here to new file, and then pick on SpriteKit action, and just give it a name and it'll save it, and you can just drag it into actions if you want. And then from there, what you can do is set up some of your actions that you're going to use later on. So for example, I've got an airplane animation, a boat animation, a car animation. Let's just make one more, which I'll just delete in a second. So we'll just say demo animation, right? And once you've done that, what you can do is go over here to your object library, and if you want to just type in animate, you can find animate with textures action. Just drag that on in there, and then once you have this selected, what you can do is drag in the textures that are going to be the animated sequences. So for example, what I did to get the airplane one in there is I found all the airplane frames. Let's just go with 4 of them for right now. Drag them in there, and then you can set the duration, start time, things like that. But you can also kind of slide things around here. You can actually compose a really comprehensive action. So it doesn't have to just be your animated frames. You could have we could have put in here, for example, fade. We could have faded in the animation as well, so we could have run these two together. We could also, there's rotate actions, all this type of stuff. But for right now, all we're doing is just animating it. So once you've done that, you're probably going to want to have it looping. So click on that little icon right there, and then just click the infinity symbol, and magically it will start looping. So you've got this action now that's going to be ready to go for later on, okay? And since I already have the 3 that I need, I'm going to just go ahead and delete this one just so I don't forget it to delete it later. All right, so now it's time to play around the property list, and wait till you see how easy this is. So we've got entries in here for all of our pages, so you can see that cover matches the name of the scene file over here, gumball, and so on like that. So we've got our map scene. I'm going to unfold this, and then we've got our elements, our settings, events, stuff like that, which we'll get to. But let's look at our events for right now. Now these are going to be events that run right away when the page opens up. So one of the first ones is I'm going to set values if nil, and what that means is that if this is your first time opening the page, the user just downloaded the book, this would come into play because there was previously no value set for vehicle animation. So what we're going to do is set that to boat animation, and you get to come up with whatever value name you want. That's going to be your key basically, and then whatever actual value it is. Okay, so it's just sort of an arbitrary name, vehicle animation. That makes sense because what are we doing? We're animating our vehicle, and but this value over here is going to be equal to one of those names that I gave it in the kit animation file. So you can see boat animation right there, matches it identically. Oops, gotta get back over this way. So now what's going to happen is the kit is going to run an action from preference, okay, Now, alternatively, you could just use like run action, but we're doing run action from preference. So what it's going to do is it's going to run an action on our vehicle. Remember, that was the name that we gave our vehicle in the or element in the scene file, and then we're putting in here the name of the saved value or kind of preference, So does that kind of make sense? Here's the saved value, our preference right there, and that points to our boat animation. So this is really just kind of like a middleman. I mean, it's just a variable for something else. So over time, what we can do is we can change this to car animation, whatever it was. So let's say that someone had already visited the scene a few times, they'd picked out their car. Well, this isn't going to run at all. Pretend that doesn't exist, and then all that's going on is vehicle is going to equal, or we're running an action from a preference, that's going to be our vehicle animation. So whatever that was last left off at. So that's how it immediately assigns the animation to that particular element. Now, what's going to happen if we want to go over here and press down on our up and down buttons to change the texture? All right, so let's take a look at that. We've got a picker down and a picker up element, and again, these both have the custom class of element, but just keep your eye on the picker up and picker down, because that's what we're going to go find in the property list. So fold that up. Let's go look at our elements, and we'll take a look at both of these together. There's really not that much inside of here. What we're doing is we're setting values from pool. Okay, so that's going to be our picker up. And let's take a look at the pool. So basically what we're doing here is we're again setting a value for our vehicle animation, but we're doing it from a pool of values. And so that's the pool over here, vehicle pool. Now what's that mean? Okay, well, over here in the property list we've got pools. You can set up pools for all sorts of different things. It could be random messages, it could be random pages to go to. In this case, it's going to be our same names that we saw in our animations file. So boat animation, airplane animation, car animation, that's our pool. And what set values from pool does is it just cycles through them. So every time you click that, what it's going to do is it's going to go, oh, wait a minute, vehicle animation already equals boat animation. So I'm going to go to the next one, airplane animation. And if it currently equaled that, then the next time you click it, it's going to go to car animation. So that's how it's picking out those particular values. And in the case of picker down, you can see that it says set values from pool reverse. So it's the same thing inside of here, but what's happening code-wise is it's going, well, if you're currently equaling the car animation, I'm going to go pick the airplane animation, so on. So just, again, cycling either forward or backward. And then our last event inside of the touch event is run action from preference, which we've already seen before. So we're just saying the vehicle is going to run this action and whatever that vehicle animation equals at the time. So you could this would be a perfect setup too for something like a dress up game, where you just kind of have these arrows and you can go through here and they don't even have to be animated. There is a version of this where it's set texture from preference. So that is how that works. Now let's go take a look at the paths, and let's go back over here to our map file. Fold that down. The kit now has a very easy way of defining a path for any other node to move along, and all you have to do is start by dragging out from where is it? Get rid of that. From the object library over here, just an empty node. So there's an empty one, drag it over here. You can see it kind of looks like one of these guys. And all you have to do then is name it path 0 to begin with. And then the next one is going to be path 1 and so on. And you can just kind of arrange these in a whatever order you want, of course, and wherever you want. But of course, we're just following this little dotted line right here. And this goes on up to path 14. And if we were to make this our vehicle follow past that, what's it going to do? Well, it's just going to loop back to path 0 again. So that's kind of really all there is to setting it up. And then in terms of the property list, all you have to do is run one little line right here. So we've got our vehicle. Our touch event for that vehicle is going to unfold, and you can see it is now animate node on path. So you don't have to define an actual path. It's just going to find those path 0, path 1, path 2, and so on, like that. And you can label those on up to 100 if you want to. And yeah, okay, so that's how that works. And I think what we'll do for the for explaining the collecting our items is come back in a new video, because I'm sure a lot of you will want to just kind of like start from right there in terms of figuring out how collecting works, so you don't have to skip through 10 minutes of another video. I'll just cut this one short here, and then we'll talk about that in part 2.